A School of Her Own by Arleta Richardson. Chapter 4. A New Chapter Begins. It was late Sunday afternoon when Pa and I arrived in North Branch. We had taken Sarah Jane to Edenville and met the lady with whom she would be living. "Sarah Jane is glad that she can stay in one place," I told Pa, "even though Mrs. Phelps is the only person there. That might be a real advantage, not having any children in the house."
"Did you say the Williams family had no one in school?"
I nodded. "All their children are grown. I probably should feel nervous staying with the school board president, but Mr. Williams was so nice, I don't think I'll mind it at all."
"You've lived with a school board president most of your life," Pa laughed. "We're just ordinary people who are interested in education."
I didn't tell Pa about the hired man I had met. I supposed I would see him at mealtimes, but I certainly didn't want to have any conversation with him. Mr. Williams was standing in the doorway when we pulled up to the porch.
"Good, good," he said. "You're just in time for supper."
He helped me down from the buggy and then assisted Pa with my trunk.
"We'll leave this right here. Len will carry it upstairs after we've eaten. Come in and be at home."
We entered a large, cheerful kitchen, and Mrs. Williams bustled over to greet us. "Miss O'Dell, we're so happy to have you with us. And Mr. O'Dell, have a seat, please. We'll be ready to eat in just a few minutes." "Alice," she called, "come help me put supper on, please." A slender girl with dark hair and eyes came in from an adjoining room. "This is the new teacher, Alice. Alice is our niece," she told me. "She's living here with us until she gets married in the spring. You two are about the same age and will be good company for each other." "Let me help you, Alice," I said. "I don't want to sit here looking like a visitor." She smiled her welcome, and together we finished setting the table. "Call Leonard to supper, please," Mrs. Williams instructed. "And come and sit down, all of you." I heard only one person coming down the stairs and wondered if the hired man had gone home on weekends. Then Mr. Williams was saying, "Mr. O'Dell? Miss O'Dell, I want you to meet my son, Leonard." I turned to look once again into that pair of laughing eyes. I grabbed the back of my chair to steady myself, and he shook hands with Pa. Then he held out his hand to me. "Miss O'Dell, I'm pleased to meet you." There was nothing on his face to indicate that he had ever seen me before, let alone had me hanging around his neck. If it had not been for the mischief dancing in his eyes, I might have been able to convince myself that he had forgotten about it. I kept my eyes on my plate as the conversation flowed around me.
"I have a son about your age," Pa was saying, "and another 2 years older. Both my boys are married and have their own farms."
"Len hasn't found a young lady who wants to be a minister's wife," Alice offered.
"That's their loss," Pa replied. "There's no higher calling than the ministry."
"And no lower wages," Len said with a laugh.
"I wouldn't ask anyone to share what I make on a country circuit. I'm glad to stay home and help Pa around here until I have a bigger church." I felt my face grow warm. A minister! It would have been bad enough to throw myself at the hired man. But at a preacher? It was suddenly quiet, and I looked up to see all eyes on me. I beg your pardon," I stammered. "Did you ask me something?" "Yes," Mr. Williams replied. "I asked if you'd come by the schoolhouse on your way, and I'd wondered if you'd seen it yet." "Oh, yes. Yes, I did. I have." Leonard hadn't mentioned my being here then. I should have been grateful, but for some reason I was annoyed with him and myself. I determined to pay attention to the conversation, and the rest of the mealtime passed uneventfully. Very soon after supper, Pa rose to leave. I walked out to the buggy with him. "Have a good week, Mabel," he said. "We'll be praying for you."
"Thanks, Pa. I'm sure I'll need it. This first week will probably not be easy, but I know I'm going to enjoy it." I watched the buggy out of sight. "I won't be going to church this evening, Miss O'Dell," Mrs. Williams said. "Pa can go with Len, and Alice and I will help you get settled." I was relieved to hear that. After this week, I would probably be expected to attend evening service on Sundays. But for tonight anyway, I was spared the embarrassment of sitting in Leonard's congregation. As soon as the dishes were cleared away, we went upstairs to my room. "Oh, this is lovely!" I exclaimed. "You can see the school from this window," Alice pointed out. The crisp white curtains framed a panorama of the countryside that was breathtaking. It seemed as though I might be able to see as far as Sarah Jane's school if there had not been so many trees covering the hills. "There's a desk here for you," Mrs. Williams said, "but we want you to know that you're welcome to work downstairs with us. You are part of the family and the house is yours. Now, let's get your trunk unpacked so that Len can take it out of your way." We quickly unpacked my clothes and books. "This room will be very comfortable in the winter, Miss O'Dell. You are right over the kitchen and the stovepipe comes right up here. It will keep you nice and warm." "I know I'll be happy with it," I said. "But please call me Mabel. Miss O'Dell is too formal for a family." "All right, Mabel," she replied. "I like that better too. Let's go down and sit on the porch until the men get home, shall we?" I had rather hoped to be in my own room for the night when the men got home, but when we were seated outside in the cool evening, I was glad to be there. "Do you know how many children will be in school this year?" I asked Alice. "And how many grades?" "There should be 15, she replied. "There are no 8th graders this fall as far as I know, but there are 3 in the 7th. 6th grade has 2, 5th has 3, and 2nd, 3rd, and 4th each have 1. Then there are 4 beginners." "The Abbott twins will be starting this year, won't they?" Mrs. Williams put in. "You may have a little trouble telling them apart. Joanna and Rosanna, they're named." "They call them Josie and Rosie," Alice added. "They do look awful lot alike." "I'm sure it will take a while to attach correct names to everyone," I admitted. "But I'll work at it. Are the books all there?" "Oh, yes," Mrs. Williams assured me. "Mr. Elliot took them over last week when he finished cleaning. He will be the janitor for the schoolhouse. The Elliots live on the next farm. It won't take you long to get acquainted with everyone." It was dusk before Mr. Williams and Len returned from church. Mrs. Williams went in to light the lamps, and I watched Len as he led the horse to the barn. Sarah Jane had been right. He was nice-looking. Still, that meant nothing to me, for I was sure we would not be exchanging very many words. I certainly had nothing to say to him. "We have family prayer before we retire at night," Mr. Williams told me. "We would be honored to have you join us." On Monday morning, I was wide awake before daybreak. As I leaned out the window, sniffing the early morning air, I was conscious of a rustling beneath me. When my eyes became accustomed to the light, I could see that the cause was the ornery goat I had met before. He was vigorously chewing on the lilac bush and would probably have it cleaned out to the roots before anyone was aware of him. Perhaps I should dress quickly and try to head him back toward the barn with the broomstick. "No," I thought. "Let Leonard take care of it. It's his fault for not keeping the animal tied." I pulled my head back in and took my time dressing and reading my Bible. When I heard a stirring in the kitchen, I went downstairs. "You'll not be having time to help with meals, Mabel," Mrs. Williams said. "Nor is there any need to. I appreciate your offer, but your job will be as big as you'll need to keep you busy." She hurried around the kitchen as she talked. "It's going to be a nice day. I suppose you'll want to get to school early this morning, it being the opening and all." I nodded and opened my mouth to answer, but she was still speaking. "Len is going over with you this morning to raise the flag. You can appoint an older boy to take care of that from now on, but since we kept the flag here this summer, he'll take care of it today." I was about to protest that I could handle it very nicely when Len and his father came in from the barn. "Good morning, Miss O'Dell," Len said. "I'll be ready to leave for school whenever you are." "Really, that won't be necessary. I'm sure I could raise the flag." "No bother at all," he replied cheerfully. "I'll be glad to see that everything is in order for you." "Breakfast is on the table," Mrs. Williams announced. "Are you all ready for your first day?" "I think so. I guess I'm a little nervous, but I'm excited too." "Buffer chewed the bottom off the lilac bush this morning, Ma," Len said after Mr. Williams had said grace. "I try to keep him tied, but he's eaten through every rope we have. I don't think he even sleeps like the other animals on the place. He spends the night chewing through his tether. I'm sorry I didn't see him before he ruined your bush." "So am I," Mrs. Williams replied. "Your grandmother planted that bush when she came here as a bride." I felt a moment of regret that I hadn't done something about the goat. "I think I have a chain in the barn we can use at night," Mr. Williams said. "It's pretty heavy to drag around, but it may put a cramp in his style."
We'll try that tonight, Len said. I can keep an eye on him during the day. He glanced at me. At least, most of the time I can head him off when he starts for the yard. I blushed and busied myself with my breakfast. Aggravating man was laughing at me again. I was sorry about the lilac, but it wasn't my responsibility to look after the goat, even if I had been the only one to see him. After morning prayers, I gathered my books and lunch pail and prepared to leave. Len jumped up and held the door open. "Let me carry your books for you, Miss O'Dell," he said. "You'll find this is a pleasant walk in nice weather. When the roads are bad, we'll take you over in the buggy or the sleigh."
"Are you always this thoughtful of the school teachers?" I asked him.
Thoughtful? He looked surprised. "Well, actually, I've never carried their books or given them a ride. But then," he said with a grin, "you're the first lady teacher we've had here since Pa's been on the school board. Not that Pa doesn't like lady teachers," he hastened to add. "It's just that none has ever applied before." He looked down at me carefully. "You are pretty small," he said. "I hope you won't have any problems with the big boys. If you do have trouble, don't hesitate to call me. I'll see that they're taken care of."
"Thank you, I'm sure I'll manage." And if I can't, I thought, you would be way down on the list of people I'd tell about it.
From inside the schoolhouse, I could hear the noise of the children arriving. I consulted my watch and took a deep breath. It was time to open the door and ring the bell for the first day of school. End of chapter 4.